Hi everybody, welcome back for the next video in my hand-in-hand watercolor series. Today I'm going to be painting the little girl from the set. Alright, so let's get started. I think I'm going to attempt to give her a white dress. Now, of course, that's easier said than done. I feel like white can be really tricky. Of course your paper is white, but white in the real world is never just white. There are so many little subtle colors in the shadows and in the highlights that can make it really tricky. But I'm going to attempt it. I haven't done this before, so we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to start with just a little bit of water in a wet on wet area here. Underneath her hair, I'm going to give it a little bit of a shadow, and a color that I really like to use, I've been talking about this color a lot in this video series, is Payne's Gray. I like Payne's Gray for creating subtle shadows on white. And so I'm going to be using a little bit of that, and I will drop that in. I painted some water just right underneath her hair. I didn't go any further into the image really than that, just kind of in this area under her hair, because I'm going to add a little bit of that color as a shadow. And then I'm actually going to probably drop in a little bit of yellow. I'm going to pull that. I don't really want that cool shadow over on this side. I think I might try to drop in a little bit of yellow over here to kind of go with that whole same sunshine, warm light trend that we were going for on our other images that I've done so far in the series, and so we'll warm that up a little bit. And I'm going to pull some of that color down here on the shadow side of her body. And then also down here on her arm. And then this area here, I did not wet this area. This is dry over here. So I'm going to take a little bit of that Payne's Gray and create some folds in the fabric in her dress. And I'm going to add a little bit of shadow area down at the bottom hem as well. She has kind of a scalloped hem here. And so we'll add just a little bit of that color along kind of the shadow side of those scallops, just to define those a little bit. And then I want to actually darken this up a little bit more over on this side. And then I will add a little bit of a shadow here where her arm connects to her body. Okay, I think that's a good start. I'm going to let that dry and see what it looks like once it's dry. I'm going to move on to her boots, and I think I'm going to give her boots, I think we're going to make them a really bright yellow. I love yellow rain boots. We're going to give her some bright yellow rain boots. While that is still wet, I'm going to drop in a little bit of a darker yellow. Just a little, that's a really small area, and I don't want it to all turn dark. So I'm just going to be really light-handed, try to be anyway, and then add a little bit of that darker color at the bottom of the boot, the sole as well. And when that dries, I might go back and add like some really dark down there at the sole, but I'm gonna wait for that to dry because I don't want it, it's wet right now, and if I add some really dark down there, it's gonna bleed up into the whole boot, and I don't want that. So I will go back later once that's dry to add that detail. Okay, I might change the tone of that a little bit once it's dry. It's really, really bright right now. I might tone that down a little bit. We'll see what it looks like once it's dry. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other boot. And this boot, her little foot, the bottom of her shoe is showing because she's taken a step there. And so I'm going to leave that. I'm not going to paint that right now. I'm going to do that probably a black or a really dark color. So I'll come back and do that later as well. Drop in a little bit of a darker, kind of an orange here to add some shading. Once again, I have my value sketch, so I can kind of refer back to that when I'm thinking about where the shadows and highlights are in the image. So that's an okay start to the boots. Let those dry, and we might come back and, or we will come back and add some other details a little bit later. I'm going to move up to her hair now, and so I'm going to go over here to my palette and use kind of the same colors that I used on the man and the lady for their hair. So the light is shining from this side, so once again we're going to go for lighter colors over here on this side of her head. And don't be afraid to leave some white areas once again. I'm going to drop some darker color in over here. And also kind of along the bottom of her hair. She has some kind of wispy hairs over here on the bottom edge, and so I'll just kind of catch those with some darker brown. Maybe want to add a little golden color in there. I have yellow ochre. Alright, so that's an okay start. I'm going to let that dry, and then I'll come back a little bit later and add some more detail to that. But right now it's wet. I might drop just a little more darker colored in here before I move on. Okay, we're gonna let that as is for now. Okay, let's move on to her skin. I am going to give her a little skin tone on her legs and her little hand. I want it a little pinkier, so I'm adding a little bit of that pinky red color I have over there. Not sure exactly what that is, but we'll use a little bit of it. Her hand is a really, really small area, so not a big deal there. I might add a little bit of Payne's Gray over here on the side of her arm. Where it would be kind of in the shadow there. Where her dress meets her leg will be a little bit of a shadow, so I'm going to drop some darker color in there while that's still wet. And then kind of work that over to the shadow side of her leg over there. And once that's dry, if we feel like it needs a little bit more, I can go back and add some more color and more shading once that's dry too. Now anytime you feel like you need to pull a little color out, just take a brush that's drier than your paper and pull a little color out. I add a little bit of shading to her hand. That looks pretty good. Let's see. We want to work on her hair a little bit, but I'm not sure that's completely dry. Her boots should be dry, so I'm going to go back down and work on those a little bit. I'm going to add some color to the soles, just using some, I think this is indigo. Just add a little bit of darkness down there. Sometimes it's those little tiny details that really just kind of make the image pop. And did you see how just that little bit of dark down there just really kind of gave that shoe, that little boot, just that little pop that it needed to really just bring it to life and define it a little bit more. And same thing there. Gonna make it nice and dark down here where it's kind of in the shadow, right where it's meeting the ground. Alright, and she has a little bitty hand over on this side too. I kind of forgot about her hand over here. So we'll go ahead and add a little flesh tone to that as well. I'm pretty happy with her dress the way it is. I might add just a little more definition to these scallops down here. That's really dark, so I'm going to wash my brush, go here and kind of pull that out. I'm going to try to blend this out a little bit. Got a little darker than I wanted. So I'll just take a kind of a dry brush and try to just kind of blend that out a little bit. And then I do want to add just a little more shadow to this side of her arm here. Just to find that edge between her arm and her body a little bit. Okay, and then we're going to go back up to her hair. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to go to her boots and add just a little more shading to her boots with an orange. Okay, and then we'll go back up to the hair and add just a little bit of detail, and then we're going to pretty much be finished with her. So I'm taking my brown, like a darker brown, and I'm just going to kind of add some just brush strokes. Real light, not a lot of pressure on my brush, just real light. Up here where the sun is hitting her head, we'll go for a little bit lighter color. And I think we're going to call that good, and she is finished.